Once upon a time in the basement.
Jordan? 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 Jordan?
What do you want?
I'm depressed.
Yeah, I know. You're always depressed. Now leave me alone.
Will you help me through my depression?
No.
But if you don't help me through my depression, I'll tell Mr. Whiskers you're being mean to me.
Who?
Mr. Whiskers. He's my friend. He's very large, and he's been known to hurt people really badly when he gets angry.
Get him off me!
Will you help me through my depression?
Yeah, I'll help you, just get him off me!
Are you sure? Mr. Whiskers and I wouldn't want you lying to us.
I'm not lying, oh my god, get him off!
Okay. Mr. Whiskers, back to the shadows.
You know what seems to be a subject very rarely tackled in video games? Suicidal depression. This is The Cat Lady, an indie horror adventure game that covers suicidal depression, among a lot of other dark things. And it's also a game I've been asked to review so many times on the internet, I kinda wanna kill myself. The Cat Lady is a game you may or may not have heard about online at this point, having blown up in a ridiculously big way since its release in 2012. Developed by UK studio Harvester Games, The Cat Lady was originally intended to be a sequel slash spin-off slash spiritual whatever successor to Harvester's first horror game, Downfall. But it quickly grew to become something much more than that. I'm actually amazed at how popular this game managed to get on the internet, to be honest. People love The Cat Lady. And it's weird because when I first played it, it sure didn't seem like the kind of game that would blow anyone away. I mean, the gameplay is pretty slow, the graphics are kind of blurry Photoshop effect, and the sound quality is lacking, to the point where some of the voice acting literally sounds like it was recorded with, like, a cell phone.
Do I know you?
Of course. You don't remember me. We met a few days ago. You were out cold at the time.
What was that, Mitzi? I didn't quite catch that. You might need to turn up your 2005 webcam mic.
Fuck you, cat lady.
So yeah, the game has somewhat of a low production value, but honestly, after playing it, I don't even care. What The Cat Lady lacks in production value, it makes up for massively in drama, details, subject matter, and more than anything, horror. Oh my, creepy dolls. Very, very creepy dolls. I'm sold. Really, all you have to do to find out whether or not you'll like this game is watch the intro. Seriously, just watch the intro. The intro to The Cat Lady is simple, it's short, it has a low production budget, and yet somehow, it's one of the best video game intros I've ever seen.
My name is Susan Ashworth. I live alone in this old 2-bedroom flat. I rarely go outside.
So at the beginning, we're introduced to Susan Ashworth, a glum, lonely cat lady, who seems like she has absolutely nothing going on in her life. That is, until she reveals...
Earlier tonight, I swallowed a whole bunch of pills. And now the room around me spins in a blurry tango as my heart slows down.
So, the game begins with a suicide. Don't say that! What, suicide? Stop it! What? You're triggering my depression! Please talk about happy things. Okay.
The game starts with the main character killing herself by swallowing a bunch of sleeping pills. Which, I have to say, that's a really interesting, dark, depressing way to start a video game. I mean, not only is it rare for a game to ever show something as bleak as straight-up suicide, but it's also rare for it to show it in blunt, real, down-to-earth honesty. Immediately after Susan kills herself in the intro, the game begins by throwing us into this hazy, limbo, purgatory place. It seems like the kind of place you'd want to go after dying. It's safe, it's calm, it feels warm, open, and free. But of course, it doesn't take long for that to change. Within the first 5 minutes, the gameplay goes total Silent Hill. Everywhere you go, you start finding multiple corpses that all resemble your own body, you hear foreboding sounds, and you see small glimpses of eerie, grotesque imagery around every corner.
Welcome to my house, Susan Ashworth. I have been waiting for you, my dear.
Susan eventually meets an old woman standing in the middle of nowhere who calls herself the Queen of Maggots. The old woman tells Susan she's been watching her for years and implies that she could be her only friend.
I was standing right behind you when you threw away all those photographs, you know? I brushed your hair every night you cried yourself to sleep.
It doesn't take long to assume this character may possibly be the manifestation of Susan's depression.
You know, you're really not helping my depression very much with this game. What do you want me to do? I want you to give me advice. Okay.
Jordan Underneath's advice for the depressed. When you feel like killing yourself, probably don't kill yourself. I mean, God, if you messed up, that would hurt.
If you don't take this seriously, I'll tell Mr. Whiskers to come back. Okay.
Jordan Underneath's advice for the depressed. For real this time. There are a lot of reasons to feel suicidally depressed. Some people feel that way because of circumstance. You know, some people's lives have just been nothing but pain, and all they want is for that pain to go away. Some people have clinical depression, or anxiety, chemical imbalances that push them towards feeling hopeless, miserable, and scared. What am I doing out here? And some people are just cynical. They're sick of this place, tired of living, and nothing seems to matter to them in the grand scheme anymore. Whatever the reason is, death, I feel, is a pretty normal thing to think about. To me, death is like the wilderness. Like sometimes you just need to be able to think about the wilderness, just to remember it's out there. Like when you feel stuck in a big city, or trapped inside a house, or drowned in circumstances you can't escape, there's always a point where it ends, and where something new begins. That's the wilderness. That's space above the earth. And I think death is the same way. Death is inevitable. You're gonna die no matter what. Nothing ever lasts, and that's okay. But that's the thing. Right now, you are lasting. You're not dead. And that's pretty fucking amazing. Don't kill yourself. So basically, this Queen of Maggots makes Susan immortal for some reason, and she tells her she wants her to go back to the living world and kill 5 evil people, called parasites.
Can't you just let me die?
I've made the decision. As long as they are alive, you cannot die.
Thanks, old lady, that makes a whole lot of sense. The game then takes you on a very dreary, vague, psychological journey, dissolving into a series of 7 chapters. After leaving the limbo world, you wake up in a hospital for chapter 2, apparently not dead from suicide. In this hospital, Susan is treated very rudely, getting belittled, being restricted to stay there and sit through therapy, and even force-fed medication she doesn't want to take.
I'm going to give you an injection. You'll feel a sharp scratch. Hold it for me, would you?
I found this part of the game pretty sad. A gloomy reminder of how suicidal people can often be treated in institutions like this. Like a child, like a prisoner, or like a crazy fool who doesn't know what's good for them and needs to be taken care of. Great job on that, society. You really know how to make suicidal people feel like they belong. There is one person in the hospital who's kind to Susan, however. A really talkative nurse named Liz.
So anyway, I shouldn't say it, but you know I'm going to anyway. You are so lucky. It's crazy.
Liz has a lot of dialogue, and she tells you a lot of things about her life. It's not that exciting to listen to, but this is actually one of my favorite parts in the entire game. Because later on, you find Liz on the roof of the hospital, about to commit suicide.
I have no one to live for anyway. No one ever listened to me. No one ever cared.
I listened.
Here, you basically get quizzed. You have to remember what Liz said to you earlier in the game in order to convince her not to kill herself. And I found that so heartbreakingly brilliant.
No!
Well, shit. I'm the best at not doing anything to help. The only other person in the hospital who seems to be kind is Susan's therapist, who goes by the name Dr. X. That is until he stabs you with a knife. So yeah, it turns out, Susan's therapist is actually a serial killer who kidnaps and murders his patients. He also turns dead bodies into classic art, which is nice. But as we now know, Susan can't die. So you kill him.
You'll feel a sharp scratch.
So from here, it seems like the game is gonna become some kind of dark, crazy superhero story about an immortal Catwoman who hunts murderers. And it kinda does. But at the same time, it's a bit more interesting than that. In Chapter 3, Susan, covered in blood and exhausted, finally makes her way back home to her apartment. And the entire chapter revolves around you trying to make Susan comfortable and calm.
You're a good friend. The best friend I have, really. The only friend in the whole fucking world.
This, as far as I'm concerned, is the best and most powerful chapter in the game. It all takes place in the apartment, and you're only given simple tasks here, like make coffee, play the piano, sit outside and smoke a cigarette. But what makes this part of the game so great is no matter what you do to make Susan happy, the state of her life is bleak and lonely. The game introduces a new mechanic in this chapter, Susan's mood meter. This meter only shows up in Chapter 3, and if too many unpleasant things happen, the unhappiness side of her meter will fill up, and she'll suffer a complete nervous breakdown. Hell yes for realistic and depressing.
This is really affecting me. That's because everything affects you. You're like a sensitive little girl. Wow, a little girl? Way to be sexist! Are you done? Will you give me more depression advice? Okay.
Get out of your comfort zone. 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 You need change. But if you don't care, you won't seek change. Stop being an asshole. You're doing your best. Value yourself. You matter. So yeah, I really like the third chapter of the game, but sadly, just when the game seems to be getting really mature and really down to earth, in Chapter 4, the whole kill the 5 parasites thing continues. Probably the weakest thing about the cat lady.
Look what the cat dragged in.
It's not bad, it's just kinda silly when you compare it to the rest of the story. Like literally, the next thing that happens is Susan gets kidnapped by a pest control man who turns out to be a crazy cannibal. With his crazy cannibal wife.
I was just saying, she's here for dinner.
Good. Dinner. I'm starving.
I don't know. I guess there are just some parts of this game I like more than others. Honestly, the only reason I'm criticizing it is because The Cat Lady is a really popular indie game. A lot of people on the internet see it as a masterpiece. But I personally don't so much. I do see it as a really awesome, entertaining horror game with a lot of deep personal subjects. But as the game gets into its second half, I feel like its story becomes a bit of a mess that could have been written better. If you don't want it spoiled for you, I'd stop watching the video right now, because I'm gonna start spoiling the rest of it. So before the whole cannibal murderer thing happens, the previous morning, Susan meets a girl named Mitzi Hunt, who turns out to be the one who found and saved Susan during her suicide attempt.
There are days I feel like just giving up. Sometimes I feel like just lock the door, get away from it all, you know, take some pills.
Strangely, Mitzi asks if she can be Susan's roommate, and you later find out she has quite a story to tell. Basically, after loads and loads and loads of expositional dialogue, you discover Mitzi has recently been diagnosed with cancer, and she once had a boyfriend named Jack who was very depressed about this. Her boyfriend spent a lot of time on depression and suicide forums looking for support, but unfortunately on those forums he met a guy called the Eye of Adam, an internet troll who tries to convince people to kill themselves. And the troll succeeded.
The Eye of Adam. I'm not surprised you want to find him.
I think the silliest thing about the second half of the game is all the other 4 parasites. Each and every one of them is encountered at Susan's apartment building. The Eye of Adam, for instance. The reason Mitzi's here is because she tracked the Eye of Adam down and it turns out he lives in Susan's apartment building. I wouldn't find that so silly, except before this, Susan gets kidnapped by the pest control cannibal guy at her building. But what makes it even more silly is right after you kill the cannibals and make your way back to the apartment, Mitzi and Susan immediately after this get attacked by a random psychopath who breaks into the house and tries to kill them.
If you hurt my friend, I will.
See, I feel like there's just way too much going on all at the same time in this game, in the same place. Like, why do there even need to be all these serial killer villains? In the parts of the game where Susan's alone, the only villain of the game is depression. And isn't that good enough? It's not like it's the job of a suicidally depressed person to eliminate all the evil in the world, but it is the job of a suicidal person to fight their depression.
A giant, blood-soaked zombie cat sat on his bed.
Wait, what? To be fair though, the entirety of the game is very well done and very entertaining. There's so much disturbing horror in this game and it never lets up for a second. And the atmosphere is really dark, dingy, and effective. I like that sound. Despite the things I would change about it, the Cat Lady's story is still mysterious and intriguing, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. Overall, the things that happen through the course of the game, you're still never really quite sure of anything. You can't tell if Susan is dead, if she's waiting in purgatory, if she's living out the dreams or maybe the memories of her life, or if she really is this immortal superhero in the real world. There are many peculiar, surreal segments where you get to explore her past and learn more about her. But outside of the fact that her firstborn child died tragically and she had a bad marriage, there's very little you can be certain of. The game's almost worth playing twice, to be honest, because you notice more interesting little things each time. Like, remember that girl Liz who jumped off the roof and committed suicide? Well, most likely she was actually dead long before Susan ever even came to the hospital, because you find her body rotting in Dr. X's dungeon. So it makes you wonder, was Susan speaking to a ghost? There are so many questions I have about what's going on in this game, but I may never know the answers. Depending on the choices you make throughout the gameplay, there are several different endings you can get to the game. The endings determine whether or not Mitzi dies of cancer or survives, but the very end itself is always the same. Susan realizes through her friendship with Mitzi that she actually likes helping people. She starts using the internet, and she starts talking to people who are depressed and suicidal, giving them advice and just listening to their problems.
I met some people. We go out sometimes, and I'm not alone anymore.
Overall, I think this game has a really good message for suicidal people. Speaking up is important. Talking to people, listening, and helping others does make you feel better. And with that, the game closes with Susan saying something dramatic and looking up into the sky as music plays over her face.
One day I'll get there. I know I will. Even if it takes me not 9, but 900 lives.
You open up your heart.
I want to look up at the sky and have music play over my face. Special thanks to my top Patreon supporters. Thank you, thank you, thank you.